Conference founder Katina Strauch.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here at the 42nd Annual Charleston Conference. Who would have believed in 1980, when we had 20 people, that we would have grown to this group of people, over 1,700. Wowee. And we're in person, which is wonderful this year. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, the places we'll go and the things we'll do. We're looking forward to a wonderful conference. Let's get on with the show.
So once again, welcome to the 2022 Charleston Conference. This is our opening keynote session. My name is Leah Hines. I'm the Executive Director for the Charleston Hub. And I'd like to say a welcome to all of our virtual attendees as well who are joining through the live stream. Thank you for being here. Katina mentioned over 1,700. That was an earlier part of the process when she was reporting. So we currently have closer to 2,300 attendees. And then 1,270 or so in person. So we're looking really, really good. I'm happy that there are so many in-person attendees this year that we're able to regather. We have over 300 international attendees from many different countries, so welcome to all of you. Whether it's your first time here in Charleston or whether you've been here before, we're so happy to have you join us. I'd like to say a special thank you to our conference directors and introduce Beth Bernhardt, who is our main program chair, to come and do the rest of some of the announcements here. Thank you, Beth.
Well, if there's conference directors in the room, can you please stand up so we can say thank you for all your help this year? Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Don is here in front row doing some blogging. Keep up with what's going on. He's really good at putting things out there about photos and all kinds of things going on at the conference. And this is a very important announcement. It involves food and drink. So listen, we got a boat. If you know, we're going to be on a boat tonight for the reception. The reception is at the USS Yorktown, and the buses will start running from the Francis Marion, outside the Francis Marion, and be running the whole time to take you in to the place. And it's really going to be a fun event. You get to also go over that big, beautiful bridge. So we look forward to seeing everybody there tonight. And we want to, first of all, we couldn't do the conference without our sponsors. So we want to thank all our sponsors. AAAS Science, AM, Annual Reviews, Better World Books, Bloomsbury Digital Resources, Cadmore Media, Cambridge University Press, Clarivate, Digital Science, Eastview Information Services, Elsevier, Ordo, Frontiers, Gale, Highland Online, Helper Systems, IOP Publishing, Ithaca, Canopy, Modern Language Association, Mauricie, Project Muse, Research Information, Rittenhouse, Sage Publishing, Society for Scholarly Publishing, Springer Nature, SpringShare, Taylor and Francis Group, Technology from Sage, and Walters Kluwer. So thank you, sponsors, for all your help with the conference.
We also have had many scholarships provided through generous support from our sponsors. So I'd like to acknowledge our General Scholarship Fund that provided funding for 25 librarians to attend, and individual scholarships provided from Elsevier, IGI Global, Harasowitz, and Sage Publishing. And now to present the Cynthia Graham Hurd Memorial Award, we have Susie Winters from Springer Nature. Thank you, Susie.
Thanks, Leah. Cynthia Graham Hurd was a librarian for over 31 years in Charleston public and academic libraries. On June 17, 2015, she died when a gunman entered the historic Emmanuel AME Church and killed 9 people during a prayer meeting. Cynthia is remembered as a tireless servant of the community who spent her life helping residents, making sure they had every opportunity for an education and personal growth. To honor her legacy, Springer Nature sponsors a librarian to attend Charleston who has created a project or led an initiative that has made a positive impact on students, local communities, and or the library profession. I'm delighted to announce that this year's recipient of the Cynthia Graham Hurd Award is Iona Luata from Simon Fraser University in British Columbia, Canada. Iona led a Black Lives Matter collection gap project in her previous role last year as a collection assessment librarian in SFU's Special Collection and Rare Books Division. In alignment with the library's statement on standing against anti-Black racism and with the commitment to reinforce efforts to collect works that challenge and dismantle white supremacy, she analysed the results of the BLM collection gap by conducting a methodological collection analysis that consisted of comparing their collection to authoritative lists. In addition, Iona drafted a statement on harmful language and archival description and also developed inclusive descriptive guidelines for the special collections after completing an audit of archival records with problematic language. Please join me in congratulating Iona as this year's recipient of the Cynthia Graham Hurd Award.
Just thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Make it possible for me to be here.
Thank you, everyone. And now I'd like to announce Dr. Joyce Dixon-File, who was one of our conference directors, will be moderating and introducing our keynote. Thank you, Joyce.
Good morning, everyone. On that fateful day of January 5, 2020, the World Health Organization announced that a cluster of cases of pneumonia had been eventually identified. Well, on that fateful day of January 5, 2020, the World Health Organization announced that a cluster of cases of pneumonia, eventually identified as COVID-19, had started a pandemic. This announcement put several organizations, including ours, library and information services, support organizations, information professionals, into adopting various methods, various techniques in order to avoid the emerging pitfalls, to meet our goals and ideals, to survive, and to fulfill our golden ideal of service for the common good. The convener of the Charleston Conference and her team of able directors also joined in the struggle against COVID and its continued challenges, which begin in this gratifying act of meeting in person after such a long break. So welcome. Then they looked around the world. They looked around the world and decided to invite as keynote speaker someone who has served in various capacities as an information professional, keen on advancing the goal of ensuring the continuity of the profession, which is to get there and serve humanity. They looked around the world and decided to invite as keynote speaker someone who was born in Zimbabwe, studied in Lesotho, worked in Zimbabwe, taught in Botswana and Lesotho, and traveled significantly to suggest to us ways of achieving our goal. Dr. Buhle Mbambo-Thata started off by serving as the director of resources and resource development in the African Library Association and the Information Association as executive director, library service, and in the University of South Africa. She also served as university librarian in the University of Zimbabwe and senior librarian, University of Botswana. She serves as chair of the board of directors of the Council on Library and Information Resources. She's a member of the board of directors of African Journals in Line. She served 2 terms as governing board member on various boards and other library information services and support organizations. In recent years, she has been involved in an advisory capacity to organizations working on preserving cultural knowledge. Her most recent research interests center on women and the various interests therein, and on info-centered technology, and also in library development in Africa. Obviously, the board of directors, together with the convener, chose a woman with broad knowledge, a very broad knowledge base, and expertise, which have been recognized and celebrated through her various awards for her dedicated service and excellence in leadership. I'm therefore very proud, as an African woman, to introduce to you a sister African, Dr. Buhle Mbambo-Thata.
Thank you. Let me help you. All right. Excellent. Thank you, my sister Joyce, for that very warm introduction. I wondered where you got some of those details from, but in this world of Google, nothing is hidden. I'd like to thank Katrina and Leah and the board of directors for inviting me to speak here today. I bring you greetings from Lesotho. So we wear this hat in winter to keep the snow off our faces because it snows in Lesotho. And we wear it in summer because it keeps the sun off our faces. And when it's old, we discard it because it's biodegradable and make another one. So today, Basotho are joining us in this meeting. I'll take them with me when I leave. It is a real pleasure to address you this morning in this Charleston conference. There's an African proverb that says, you must put your slides on. And that's the outline of my presentation. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to get there quicker, go alone. But if you want to go further, go together with others. The proverb remains as applicable today as it was when it was first promulgated. It espouses collaboration, working and working together toward the same goal and for impact and for a better world. The theme of this conference, Look at the Places We Have Been, invites us to imagine a journey of many destinations, an exploratory journey of discovery and engagement, and certainly not settlement, because settling is an antithesis to discovery. In discovery, we find possibilities, while in settling, we decay. In discovering, we continue to learn, to grow, to find pathways to a better future. In discovery, we question. We question inequality, we question power, we ask why. And together in these conference sessions, we will explore, discover, chart ways forward of getting there together. As knowledge professionals, publishers, librarians, information scientists, we've espoused collaboration in many ways. Our profession demonstrates that successes in collaboration, demonstrates our successes in collaboration in the standards that we have set together, in the many networks that we have set up, and many associations. However, as a profession, we must be cognizant of that there are many legal, infrastructural, and conceptual impediments that indeed delay collaboration, prevent collaboration, deter, and sometimes hinder collaboration. As professionals in the knowledge sector, we ought to challenge, to question those hindrances. In 2025, the heads of state and presidents of the world signed the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And in signing the Sustainable Development Goals, they underscored that these would represent the creation of a future that we want. And they underscored that none would be left behind as a tagline. The goals were and continue to be a call to working together across national boundaries to achieve common good for humanity. The 17 goals make it clear that none of them can be achieved by working in silos, and it is in working together only that we can achieve them. As we stand here today, can we truly say that 8 years before 2030, humanity has sought to build a better future? Are we anywhere near that? The world we live in faces many challenges. And in this section, I will talk about some of those challenges, most of which we know. Pandemics and disease. The advent of HIV/AIDS, and more recently COVID, have scattered the gains that humanity had made in the 20th century. The UNDP 2021 report says COVID-19 has made achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals impossible for less developed countries like mine, Lesotho. But I think it applies as well to developed countries. According to Wikipedia, 6.7 million have died of COVID, and there are still 625 million active cases. Besides death, deprivation, and depression, misinformation and disinformation have characterized the era of COVID-19, making it difficult for the average person to differentiate between truth and untruth. And that has heightened the need for us as information and knowledge professionals to work together to access common good resources that would help to inform our citizens to make better decisions. As if the world had not seen enough, as soon as COVID had ended, came along monkeypox. According to the World Health Organization, by June 2022, monkeypox had spread to 28 countries with 1,536 cases and 72 deaths. These diseases remind humans that isolationist policies will not protect humanity from pandemics, but working together will. While humanity was recovering from COVID-19, the Russian-Ukraine war started. According to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, between February and October 2022, 15,246 civilians there were 15,246 civilian casualties in Ukraine, 6,114 dead, and over 9,000 injured. Many have been displaced. The war has divided the world along the Cold War days lines, threatening the world with a third world war and a nuclear war. The war in East Europe is affecting world security, currencies, infrastructure, energy, and world stability. Is there anyone in this room who's not affected by the war in Ukraine? It is heart-wrenching to watch unwarranted loss of life daily and young people's futures dashed. And then when one listens to TV or radio broadcast from Ukraine and also from Russia, one wonders, are they talking about the same war? And as information professionals, we realize that information itself has been weaponized. In the Horn of Africa, the Ethiopian civil war in the Tigrayan region has left over 500,000 people dead. The destruction of cities in Ukraine, Ethiopia, Syria, Afghanistan, Mali, and wherever else there is war includes destruction of lives and knowledge systems. Systems of libraries, museums, archives are destroyed in the process of war. When the war has ended, what will be left of knowledge systems? Climate change is another calamity facing humanity. As we were preparing for this conference, we watched Hurricane Andrew make landfall in Florida. And my family asked, are you really going to Charleston, where there is a hurricane? And I said, it will have passed. We have witnessed hurricanes all over the world with devastating consequences. Recently in Nigeria, 500 people were killed in a flood, and many left homeless. We've seen floods in Europe, Mozambique, Belgium, Pakistan, Japan, with lots of lives lost and livelihoods lost. The frequency and intensity of these speak to a globe that's warming up. The heat waves, on the other hand, in Europe, Australia, California, South Africa, all started fires. In South Africa, a rare collection at Jaeger Library at the University of Cape Town was burned on 18th April 2021. In that, 3,500 films were lost permanently, 4,200 records were damaged, and what the fire did not kill, the fire brigade drowned. How does a library recover from such a loss? How shall knowledge escape climate change? Or is it, in fact, that knowledge holds the key to stemming climate change and perhaps reversing it? The energy crisis is an emerging calamity. Between 2019 and 2022 June, the crude oil prices have more than doubled. In 2020, the price of crude oil was $41.96. By June 2022, it was $104.84. I didn't check it last night, and it's probably gone up again. The increase of price of gas and oil can be linked directly to the war in Ukraine. So what has all this got to do with libraries? What have all these calamities got to do with libraries? Many of us today sit in this room because there's electricity, we can see each other. Because there's electricity, we can see this slide, and we can hear each other. The energy crisis threatens meetings like this, threatens our work. We have to start thinking of a different life. How will we continue to provide our services without energy, without electricity? The deluge of misinformation further muddies the discourses on pandemics, wars, and climate change. On all these issues, there are voices for and voices against. The misinformation and sometimes downright lies accompanies these wars and really sets our profession at edge. What becomes of integrity and truth of the word when all facts appear to be relative? These developments oblige our professions to speak out and be heard, and to help citizens find ways and tools to separate truth from lies. In the next slide, I share very briefly about 3 enablers that I think lay the foundation of how we can collaborate. And the first one is information as currency. The Corporate Matters blog says about information, forget Bitcoin. The currency of the world is information, transferable at no cost, understood in every language, and is also one of the world's most valuable currencies in the modern age. Those who understand the value of information will win every war, will in fact rule the world, even when they use the information to deceive the world. The challenge to our sector is how do we prevent the use of information as a weapon for mass delusion? How can we at this conference develop strategies that will enable us to empower citizenry with information to enable them to use the valuable currency of information to prevent wars, pandemics, and climate change? Collaboration is another pillar, because no sector and no knowledge sector can find this alone. A Hopi proverb says, one finger cannot lift a pebble, but a hand can move a rock. It is in working together collaboratively that we can find solutions. A third pillar is communication. The lever of communication is key to ensuring collaboration and creating informed citizenry. Transparent and open communication is a critical pillar in enhancing collaboration. And we saw this very well during COVID, where at the World Health Organization, information about discoveries of variants was openly shared, and scientists could respond, react as they shared information. But there are also opportunities at the World Health Organization. Information about discoveries of variants was openly shared, and scientists could respond,
where is
react
Buhle?
as they shared information. What happened there? That's okay. But there are also opportunities at the World Health Organization.
Could you stop Buhle from
Information
speaking from
about
wherever she
discoveries
is?
of variants was openly shared. You stopped her? Thank you. There are also opportunities for intervention by our knowledge sector. And I've grouped these in 3. I've grouped these in 3. The first one is transformative strategies. The second one is social justice and equality strategies. And the third one is the preservation of knowledge. Under transformative strategies, I start with, it is important, if we're going to change the information environment, it is critical that we create a legal framework that promotes fair use, responsible copyright, and promoting access to information for development. Most of the legislation governing our copyright and fair use in our countries is based in the print era and is totally inappropriate for the digital era in which we operate. As a sector, to what extent have we actively supported supported processes like the Marrakesh Treaty that was promulgated by WIPO to promote access to information? What opportunity exists for us to grow similar treaties that will enable us to deliver content to people that are sight impaired, to translate, and to respond to needs of people with disabilities without infringing other creatives' rights? Equally, we must acknowledge that within this legal environment, we must appreciate that there is interdependence of ideas and cultivate a stance that ideas beget ideas, and therefore responsible information access, authentication, and ethical transmission remains a key role in growing the information economy. I applaud the work that was recently done at World Trade Organization, in which the IP for vaccines was waived, enabling more countries to develop vaccines and therefore continue the fight against COVID. At this conference tomorrow, in a plenary, I think, there is going to be a panel in a topic called the long arm of the law, and it's ably facilitated by my colleague Anne Ackerson. I saw her earlier, a friend from IFLA days. I am really hoping that that discussion there will generate some ideas on how we can create a legal framework that promotes access to information across borders, because knowledge knows no boundaries. A second transformation strategy relates to how research is communicated. We cannot continue to perpetuate models that worked many years ago, that recognize that only certain journals are high impact, and exclude articles that impact and change their communities. A season has come that we must look at research assessment models and look and find models that recognize researchers' contributions and communicate research differently. The work around DORA, the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, is one that is like a natural partner for us in the information economy, because it propagates finding alternative ways of recognizing researchers, their promotion, and their prestige. From a Global South perspective, which in fact may be a perspective of many less endowed institutions here in the US and in the world, pursuing traditional best practice, best journals publishing lures our leading researchers to publishing in journals whose subscriptions we cannot afford as institutions. And so one wonders, to what extent what impact do those researchers have if their work cannot be accessed by their own students? It's critical that we find ways of promoting responsible access. Research recently done by IFLA after COVID showed that there was many prohibitions in sharing of information during lockdown when students needed to be working from home. When students needed to be working from home. As an access to information advocate, it is my responsibility to promote Article 19 of access to information as a human right. As libraries, librarians, publishers, and other workers in the knowledge economy, we must question what wisdom is there in the ownership of books, or print, if you cannot share or lend them. We must question the agenda of those who propagate restrictions and seek ways of removing restrictions and promoting sharing of information. We must also find ways of promoting responsible open access. Open scholarship models that continue the old practice of requesting or asking for high page fees continue to only benefit the haves against the have-nots. Such exorbitant page fees have the net effect of excluding less endowed institutions and authors, as well as discriminating against emerging brilliant researchers. We need to question who open access benefits if it excludes by class. It is critical that we ensure that no community is left behind. All forms of discrimination and exclusion that prevent access to information must be limited. One thinks of promotion of languages, not just colonial languages, but languages, not just colonial languages and languages of the powerful, but languages of the minority. Should there be no moral obligation to publish indigenous language books, in order to preserve those languages, to grow them, and to sustain them? In the same way with our collections, what and who do our collections represent? Whose voices are heard in our collections? Are the voices of the minority heard? What are the implications, for example, of recent censorship tales we hear from across the United States, where books have been forcefully removed from libraries? And finally, under social justice, we must deliberately decolonize knowledge spaces. No language, no culture, no creed is superior to another. Knowledge practitioners have a responsibility to decolonize knowledge spaces by applying the notion of equity of access to all knowledge types. Decolonizing knowledge means creating spaces at the table for all knowledge groups to be heard, to remove historical barriers to access that privilege only certain groups, to be deliberate about inclusion of all knowledge forms, to be conscious of colonial bias and blindness. My final strategy is one that relates to preservation of knowledge. There is urgent need for sustainable preservation of knowledge in the face of climate change and wars. This includes digitization of knowledge and creation of preservation protocols that enable and facilitate preservation. These should also be supported by appropriate and enabling legal frameworks, including policies, legislation, treaties, and acts of parliament. Preservation of knowledge should include preservation of all forms of knowledge for all groups without discrimination. IFLA has led the charge by creating guidelines for setting up a digital unification project. And this provides guidelines on how different forms of knowledge can be preserved and digitized while maintaining standards. I'd like to draw some examples of work that has been done proactively to preserve knowledge in the face of war and to preserve knowledge in the face of climate change. As the war started in Ukraine, a group of people, activists, got together to back up websites and online information on Ukraine. In the face of the war and destruction, activists, professionals have worked together to preserve Ukraine's culture at a website nicely known as Saving Ukraine's Cultural Heritage Online. Such proactivity is commendable, and in a sense, many communities need to be thinking about this even before the war starts in their various locations. or before the libraries are destroyed by floods and fires. The Timbuktu manuscripts are known to many of us, but in the war, the Mali War between 2012 and 2013 threatened the Timbuktu Library, a library that highlights the literary works of Africa and demonstrates Africa's knowledge development going back centuries. Because of collaboration of many partners, governments, NGOs, and funders, and those collections have been digitized and are now available at Mali Magic, the great legacy of Mali and the people's quest to preserve it. And that collection is now available online. At this conference, I'm happy to inform you that a project that will, in a sense, complement the Timbuktu manuscripts, digitization and preservation of African knowledge, will be launched. And this is a project that's led by the Coherent Digital called Africa Commons. The project preserves and disseminates African content that is previously not known. And many of us believe it's a step in the direction of preserving Africa's collections in the face of climate change and wars. And as I draw to a conclusion, I've provided some practical strategies that have been considered towards creation of collaborations. Access to information is a human right, and the value of information as a currency for dialogue and cohesion can only be realized when we create mechanisms for ease of access to true and authentic information. Together, let us harness technologies to level the playing field and enable citizens of all countries to navigate a post-truth world. We will get there together when we let inclusivity be the guiding compass by asking difficult questions of who is missing in my radar? Whom should I be including? Is it not time, ladies and gentlemen, to set aside our differences and focus on our common beliefs? And that will require that we set aside some traditional, political, and firmly held beliefs and look for ways of forging a way forward together. In the presentation today, I have sought to illustrate how through information we can pursue social justice and equity. We can pursue collaboration. To demonstrate that together, we can find ways and pathways to enable access to information, to make access to information a currency for transformation, to highlight our roles in promoting access to truthful information. The world of violence, climate calamity, pandemics, and pain behooves each of us as a professional to seek avenues to build a world that is better. Nelson Mandela said, each of us has an opportunity to change the world and make it a better place. It is in our hands to make a difference and make the world a better place. I thank you.
We'll take questions from the audience at this time. If you can line up over here on this side. I have a microphone. Oh, so sorry. Anyone with questions? Joyce, do you have some questions or observations to add?
Yes, are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to thank Dr. Mbambo-Thata for her affirmative and positive message. It's a challenge for us to look at all the technologies we've employed, all the strategies we've employed post-COVID, and to now harness them so that we sort of stride over the economic divide that has hampered the effective use of those technologies. I am particularly gratified that she used the opportunity to bring to the fore the disadvantages that exist in certain countries, but particularly those located in our native Africa. We have a divide which, cuts across boundaries. It cuts across the boundaries of income. It cuts across the boundaries of access to materials. It cuts across the boundaries of gender. So I'd like for some of you here who are familiar with those topics to ask questions and to make comments to her that would help us to better understand the ways in which we could bridge the divide. And as we've started under COVID with so much determination and resolve, for us to see how we can continue on this global sort of trend with a little bit of fairness.
If we have any questions from our virtual attendees who are joining via the live stream, you can put that in the attendee chat and I can pass those through to the presenter as well. Any questions from the audience here? Here we go. Say your name before you start your question.
Lev Rickards from Santa Clara University. Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Thata, and for speaking. I wonder if you could share a little more about Africa Commons and the collections that are in it now and the hopes for additional material that will be in it.
Yeah, I think so.
There. Thank you very much for that question. I hope that my colleagues from Coherent Digital are here and can engage with, please stand, so that colleagues can go to her. Hi.
Hi, Eileen.
During question time. The project, and I must commend Coherent Digital for being consultative and not being presumptuous, that they can provide an African solution from America without speaking to Africans. And they've been consultative and they've spoken to many of us about the project and its value. And what it has done, excuse me, what the current work has done is that it's worked with material that is born digital, material that has already been digitized, and they use AI to scale the creation of metadata, making it easy to collect as well as to disseminate and to discover African collections. There are many African collections that were created sometimes through funding, and when the funding stopped, the digital collections links broke, and it remained there undiscovered. When the project closed and there was no continuity, the collections couldn't be found. And Coherent Digital has gone out and hunted for those collections somewhere in the belly of the internet and indexed them. And I think the colleagues from Coherent Digital will be available to discuss the project further during tea break. Thank you.
You go first.
Hi, Dr. Buhle, Eileen Lawrence. We'll be seeing each other tonight. I want to say how honored we are to have you working with us and helping us on Africa Commons. Your contribution is really making the project happen in a great way. Anyone here who has African materials in your libraries, we are uploading all this content and making it discoverable. We're finding so far thousands of items from hundreds of archives and libraries. It's endangered, and most of it is not indexed. So our commitment is to make discoverable gray literature, and this is really important for making those silent voices heard so that we can bring diversity into the knowledge space. A lot of these materials will become digitized and go online and represent digital repatriation. We're making the materials free to libraries within Africa. So this is an extremely important project, and we really invite your participation. And I'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Is there time for another question? Yes? Joyce? Hello. Thank you very much to the speaker, who was just wonderful. And we were told you were going to be wonderful, and you were. Okay. But I want to ask a difficult question now, which is, we're lots of presentations at this meeting about open access models. Open access is crucial to African scholars because they want to get their thinking out to the world at large, their results, the research results. They're very difficult. The present models almost all rely upon article processing charges. They tend to be too high for many people in the continent, as you know. Have you any insights about this, about possible models which will make it possible for what we used to call the global south to reach out to everybody else and get their research out to the wider world?
Thank you for that very good question. It's what keeps many of us awake at night, because the hopes of open access are often not realized because of the page fees. There's a number of initiatives that work towards reducing the fees. Electronic information for libraries, I feel, negotiates, particularly for less developed countries, reduced fees, but they are still high for those institutions that are not members. And many universities have responded by setting up their own publishing agencies, so that from their own universities, they publish their own work. And this is why it's so important for us that other ways of recognizing research are found. Otherwise, the publications that those universities are making available online will be ghettoized. They will not be recognized. And there needs to be a will to change how research is recognized. That is not just from publishing in high-impact journals, but it is in publishing quality work that changes your community, that speaks to your community, that helps your students to grow, that helps your community to change. So we need to change, not just tinker with a few things, but to change the way research is communicated, the way research is recognized, and the way impact is recognized.
Yeah. To that, I would like to add the question of copyright. When students in Africa do individual research, original research, most of the time they are unable to sort of have their work copyrighted. And so because the cost of copyright is sometimes even just as prohibitive as paying for college itself. And so most of the time you have researchers from the outside world, they go in and sort of take possession of some of these works, these originals by the students, the local students, and take possession of them. And because of that, many of the universities have become reticent in allowing foreign researchers to go in and literally poach the work, the original work of these students who have done original research in their fields. So in addition to all the external problems we have to look at the availability of grants. It comes down to money. Availability of grants to enable students doing research, original research in those fields, which would inform the books that people use as secondary sources in Africa.
Thank you, Joyce, for that addition.
Thank you so much for your talk. I mean, there's so much to think about. And I work with the Annals of Internal Medicine, and I believe we have a project in the Working with Journals in Africa. I had a question about Hinari, because as a lot of the journals are in Hinari, and is it helping or is it not helping? And a lot of journals have waivers for developing countries, and I'm wondering, do the authors know about them? And what more can we do with some of the tools we have now? You know, because I'm getting emails and everything from Minari all the time, and we're working with them and everything, and I wanted to know if that's having an effect.
Thank you for that question. Hinari is doing marvelous work, and it's a lifesaver for many medical schools and health institutions. But every day there's a new researcher, and every day there's a new researcher to be trained, and new students to be trained. So the questions will keep coming in terms of how to best use Hinari. And waivers are available for a number of journals. But there is the perception that the more expensive ones, the high impact ones, are the ones to go and publish in. And so people still hunt for the one that went away. And that's why we need to shift the model altogether, so that what is recognized for promotion is the impact of the article, not only the impact of the journal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that'll do us. Thank you to our presenters. Enjoy your lunch in Charleston. Have a good day.